Okay, so we talked about the Catholic or the Protestant Reformation last week or last time. We talked about the move by the Calvinists. We talked about Zwingli, and now we're going to talk about what the Catholic Church tries to do to try and stop everyone from leaving. This is a time where they could have completely fallen apart, and instead they decide that they're going to try what you might term either the Catholic Reformation or the Counter Reformation. Okay, uh, so it starts with the Pope, and he wants to reform Catholicism, bring back the best things about being Catholic, and try and stop the Protestant Reformation. Okay, so that's basically the whole goal of the Catholic Church at this time. Also, about this time, Ignatius Loyola founds a group called the Jesuits, and they call themselves the Troops of the Pope. Okay, and anyway, they'll go out and they'll defend Catholicism everywhere. So uh, this is how they're going to try and fight the Reformation, by actually fighting the Reformation. So in the same vein, you have the Council of Trent. Okay, this is going to eliminate church abuses. Uh, it's going to regulate priest education, and priests can no longer have children. Now, the truth was, not all the priests were really having children. It was a lot more of the bishops, archbishops, and popes that had children. But let's set the rules for the people down at the bottom, and we'll let them influence what's at the top. Okay. You have the Roman Inquisition. They start attacking heresies, including Galileo. Galileo was someone who said that the Earth was not the center of the universe. Now, Copernicus made the same claim as Galileo, but what makes his claim a little bit weaker is the fact that he was still alive after he published it. Copernicus wrote it in the last year he was alive, and Galileo is going to get the brunt of all of this. Okay, the Catholic Church also puts together a list of prohibited books. This is under Pope Paul IV, and these are books that if you're a Catholic, you're not allowed to read. Okay, uh, so basically, if you read this, it's going to poison your mind against Catholicism, and you don't need to do that. As you can see right here, you have Index Librorum Prohibitum. Okay, I'm sorry, that's Librovum. Librorum Prohibitum. Okay, uh, sorry, my Latin is very out of practice. So basically, Index of Books Prohibited. Anyway, sorry about that. Maybe you can see me struggle with another word here in a few minutes. Okay, so reasons for exploration. Now, here's some things you've got to think about. Okay, most people don't like to move away from where they live. Most people, well, especially during this time period we're talking about, the majority of people were born and died in the same house that they were born in. Okay, so basically the velocity of their lifetime would be at zero. Okay, so the truth is, you know, there's got to be something to get you to want to move on to a better place than where you are, or a different place from where you are, because people don't like change in general. Okay, so the bubonic plague kills 75 to 200 million people. Okay, by the way, not 75 people, but 75 million to 200 million. One out of every three people in Europe. They needed new resources after this. And by the way, the one third that was wiped out wasn't just the peasants, it also attacks the nobility and the clergy. Okay, the Renaissance is beginning. This is a release of Greek knowledge after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. It kind of goes and disseminates into Europe, and people start looking into it. There's question of life. There's thoughts of philosophy. What happens when we die? What happens when we live? How do we live better lives? All those things come pouring out after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Uh, the printing press. Johann Gutenberg develops a printing press about the same time as these other events are happening. 1453 printing press, bubonic plague, and and the fall of the Byzantine Empire. So one of those hallmark years in history. Okay, and then people got a taste for all these Asian products through the Crusades, so they want they want to get to these markets to sell their goods. They want to get the spices, they want to get the silk. Okay, so this is why people will do this, mainly for opportunity and for wealth. Okay, there's some other reasons too. Everyone says God, glory, and gold, but gold is really the money is the key factor here. And you can argue this with me if you want, but not now because I'm in the room by myself. Henry the Navigator, okay, also known as Henry IV, the crown prince of Portugal, who will later become the king of Portugal. And he starts mapping Africa in 1422. Okay, now a lot of the mapping skills he gets, he steals from Muslim Muslim sailors in the Mediterranean. Okay. Also, most of the things he puts in his naval college he steals from Muslim sailors in the Mediterranean. But if I said Caribbean just a minute ago, that probably doesn't make much sense. There weren't many Muslim sailors in the Caribbean during the 1400s. Okay. Particularly in the early 1400s. So he starts a naval college. He wants to make money for Portugal, and he wants to get souls for God. They together will design a ship that can sail in all four directions. So north, east, west, and south, it can sail against the wind. Okay. If you're going to be exploring, it is extremely important for you not to be limited by the wind. Okay. He also comes with, or he also helps develop the astrolabe, which tells you the position, your position relative to the stars, and the compass, which shows you where true north is. So that can, both things are really important for getting headings. So let's move to Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama is a Portuguese sailor, and he is the first person to go around the Horn of Africa to Asia. Okay. Now, at this time, because he does this trip first, basically Portugal owns the rights to that route for a long time, and no one else can use that route. And if you want anything from Asia, you have to go through Portugal. The people that invested in this, they made 1,000% profit on the trip. Okay, so uh, once they get back, they arm themselves and they go back to the Molucca Islands that the Spice Islands are right over here. This is what we think of with Indonesia and to India. And with the weapons, they were able to seize important ports. Yeah, watch out for Portugal. They'll steal all your stuff. How many times have you heard that in your lifetime? A billion. That's wrong though. That's bad math. Okay, so much of the spice trade from this point is now under the control of the Portuguese. Okay, uh, so some of the pepper being harvested in Malabar in southwestern India, uh, the spice trade in Constantinople, everyone was coming in and they were paying outrageous prices for these spices. Not all these have to do with food. Some of these are medicinal, and The kind of medicine that you might need in your marriage after you've been married for about 20 to 30 years. I won't get into specifics, but that's some of the spices that we're talking about right here. Now, this is the known world that was mapped during the time of Columbus. Okay, so you see Africa here, you see Europe. Europe is pretty detailed, and the Mediterranean is pretty detailed right here. Even the Sinai Peninsula is pretty well detailed. The Black Sea you can make out, Adriatic Sea, Aegean Sea. Okay, so people had gone around this area quite a bit. This would be Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So remember, at this time they're doing everything by descriptions of people that had been into the area before, so everything's kind of freehand drawn, on a much smaller scale. If you've ever drawn a map for someone to tell them where you live, you'll see that everything is not to scale on the paper as you draw it. Anyway, I appreciate cartography. I'm moving on. So Cristobal Colon, okay, uh, so he is someone who calculated that the Earth was actually smaller than Ptolemy said. Ptolemy said that the Earth was round, okay, in about the year 200 AD, and by measuring shadows, he calculated the Earth was about 25,000 miles around. The truth was the Earth was, I'm sorry, 24,000 miles around. The Earth is closer to 25,000 miles, but he did that by calculating shadows. And if you don't appreciate just how amazing that skill is, whenever you don't know how far you are from the light source that's making those shadows, it's it's a ridiculous skill to be able to have. And by the way, sorry for the pop-up that came on the right-hand side of the screen. I probably should have read that, but that's some email that came into me, and I hate how that jumps onto the screen while I'm working. Well, anyway, so Columbus needs someone to help fund his trip. So he goes to Italy. Italy isn't interested. He goes to England. England isn't interested. And he goes to Spain, who's interested because now they have money after pushing out the Moors and the Jews out of the Iberian Peninsula. So his pitch is he's going to open up a new route to Asia that the Spanish now can control. They can spread Christianity and bring back all the riches. And so he lands in San Salvador on October 12th, 1492. Okay, that's only 6 days away from today. Okay, he thought Cuba was Japan. He demanded gold from the tribes, and on Christmas Day of 1492, the Santa Maria sinks off the island of Hispaniola. So basically, Haiti and Dominican Republic, they right off the coast of that is where the Santa Maria sinks. So he leaves people behind. His men, while he's gone, decide to start enslaving the local population. The local population rebels, kills a few of Columbus's men. When Columbus gets back, he sees that his men have been killed. He doesn't get the full story of what goes on, and so he enslaves several of the natives on the island and takes them back to Spain with him. Now, as far as the problem of him calling everyone Indians, remember there are no Asians in Europe at the time. There are white people, there are black people from Africa that have, gone to the coastal cities of Europe. But other than that, there's no Asian people. So when they run into a group of Native Americans who look different from the white people and the black people, then it's not too far of a jump to say that they were in Asia and they called them Indians. Now you would think that in you know, the 30 years after that, by the time that Valsamuller names the territory after Amerigo Vespucci, that they know that it's not America, that they might call these people there by their tribal names or even by Colombians. But no, let's stick with Indians. So nice job, history, on not fixing this one when you had the chance. So the Treaty of Tordesillas. So there's a major problem. Okay, in 1494, Vasco da Gama claimed one route around Africa to to India, and Columbus has tracked a different route. So they go to the Pope. They're both Catholic nations, Spain and Portugal, and together they decide that they're going they're going to come to some disagreement or some agreement between them. And so the Pope splits the world, and basically Portugal will get Brazil, Asia, and Africa, and Spain's going to get South America. Okay, so by the way, on the left, this is the first map ever to use the term New World on it, where they recognize that. That's a map that a couple discovered in a stack of maps that they had, and they bought the stack for about $10,000. This one here alone sold for $80,000 afterwards, and they ended up buying it back from that person and donating it to the University of Texas at Arlington. And you can see this up in the 6th floor if you have a good reason to be up there. If you are up there, make sure you wear gloves, otherwise you'll get yelled at if you touch the map with your dirty, dirty student hands. I know because I got yelled at for touching it without gloves on with my dirty, dirty student hands. And then they didn't want me looking at any of the maps because they said that I was careless. Let people know the rules before they start touching things with their dirty, dirty hands. Okay, I give you John Cabot, as named by the English, who was actually Giovanni Caboto, a beautiful sounding Italian name, Giovanni Caboto, and you get stuck with John Cabot. That's probably why he only lived to 48 years, okay? Because they called him John Cabot. Uh, he's an Italian, but he is exploring for England because they're paying for him to explore. And he's the first European to see North America, and this trip is paid for by Henry VII. So, as a result of him seeing visually with his eyes North America, it gives a claim to England for all of North America, just because he saw it. Imagine everything you looked at was yours. Well, anyway, so welcome to Ridiculous Land. Okay, let's get to Ferdinand Magellan. So, Ferdinand Magellan is sent out shortly after, well, actually about 20 years after the Treaty of Tordesillas. And his job is to go and prove that the line the line that was created by the Treaty of Tordesillas goes all the way around the world, and the only way you can do that is by going all the way around the world. So as you can see here, he sets off the coast of Spain. Okay, goes down here through the Straits of Magellan. Kind of ironic that it was had the same name he did. He sees the Pacific Ocean. He's not the first, but he names it the Pacific Ocean for the fact that he said it was peaceful, which, if you've ever seen the Pacific, he's full of crap. So, anyway, he continues on this expedition, okay? Keeps going west. Eventually, he will run into the Philippine Islands, which are worth a lot of money for the trade. He sees a way of making this trip far more profitable than it would have been otherwise. So he gets his men together, gets them all fired up, and they go running and they scream out, "For Spain!" They're running on the beaches in slow motion. They're carrying the rifles. They look really heroic. And on the third step, Magellan is shot and murdered. Okay? He's dead. All of his men are captured. Okay? This is going a little bit of a failure. Okay? All of his men are captured and they're imprisoned. Okay? They're held in a jail there for about 6 months and eventually they're shipped back to Spain. Okay? On a Portuguese, trading boat. So they get back and they find out one thing that's kind of weird. Uh, they're doing a ship's log every day, a captain's log, even though the captain's dead. They continue it, and they have a page for every single day that they were gone, even while they were captured. And when they get back, they find out that their logs are a day off of everyone else, and that's because of the international date line. If you travel west all the way around the world, you will have experienced one day less than everyone else on Earth. Deal with that. Now, history sees that Magellan is the first person to circumnavigate the world, but he didn't finish the trip. He only made it 2/3 of the way around. So, anyway, where am I going with that? So he just made it 2/3 of the way around the world. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and keep going, so everyone hold on. This is where we're ending today. It's not because I'm mad at you. Remember, you're my people. I love you. So if you need anything, let me know. Until then, I'll see you in 2 days. Be safe and peace. Shalom.